Manipulators thrive in the shadows of confusion, and their strongest weapon is the fact that most people don't even recognize what's happening to them until it's too late. The very first step to silently outsmarting manipulators is to learn how they operate. Their patterns are rarely random. They rely on predictable tactics like guilt, tripping, gaslighting, playing the victim, flattery followed by subtle control, or creating a sense of obligation in your mind. By observing these strategies, you begin to strip away their element of surprise. Pay attention to how they speak. Are they always turning conversations back to themselves? Do they exaggerate your mistakes to make you feel small? Do they constantly shift blame when things go wrong? These are red flags that signal manipulation. Once you can identify these patterns, you no longer respond blindly. You start to see the strings they are trying to pull. The key here is silent awareness. You don't need to accuse them directly or start an argument. Instead, keep a mental note of what they are doing. This makes you far more prepared for the next time they attempt the same trick. A manipulator loses their power when you see through their illusion. Like a magician caught mid-performance, the trick no longer works when the audience knows where to look. By mastering the art of observation, you gain an invisible advantage. You don't fight them head-on, which they might expect, but you also don't fall into their traps. This quiet awareness is the foundation for every other strategy. Because until you recognize the game, you can't win it. Outsmarting manipulators silently begins with the clarity of sight. See the pattern, know the tactic, and prepare your response without giving away that you're on to them. Silence is one of the most powerful yet underestimated tools you can use against manipulators. They feed off your reactions, whether it's anger, defensiveness, or even excessive justification. Every word you say gives them material to twist and use against you. But when you respond with calm silence, you create a vacuum they cannot control. This unsettles them because manipulators depend on steering the emotional tone of the conversation. For example, if someone is trying to guilt-trip you with lines like, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me," most people rush to defend themselves. But if you simply remain calm and silent, looking at them without reacting, the power dynamic shifts. They expect an emotional payoff, but instead, they meet a wall of composure. This forces them to reveal more of their intention, often leading them to overplay their hand. Silence is not about weakness. It is about creating space where you observe and choose your next move carefully. It also buys you time to think, preventing you from being cornered into impulsive decisions. Manipulators are skilled at creating pressure with fast words and emotional pushes. So your silence is like a shield that breaks their rhythm. Think of it like chess's silence is the pause before the checkmate, the moment where your opponent realizes they can't predict your move. By staying quiet, you maintain control of your emotional energy, and manipulators can't figure out what buttons to press. It's a subtle, genius way to outsmart them without confrontation, leaving them frustrated and powerless. The greatest weapon manipulators use is not their words. It's your emotions. They study you, notice your weaknesses, and then press the right buttons to get the reaction they want. Maybe they know you hate being seen as selfish, so they use guilt. Maybe they know you crave approval, so they dangle praise. The silent way to outsmart them is to take control of your emotional triggers. This doesn't mean becoming emotionless. It means mastering emotional discipline. Start by identifying your most common triggers. Do you react strongly to criticism? Do you feel pressured when someone says, "If you really cared, you would"? Once you are aware of these triggers, you can pause before responding. For example, if a manipulator says, "Wow, I didn't think you'd be this irresponsible," instead of defending yourself or lashing out, take a breath. Recognize it for what it is, a tactic. By not reacting, you take away their power. This skill requires practice, but it is transformational. Over time, manipulators realize they can no longer control you through emotional hooks. They may escalate at first, but eventually, they see that their methods don't work on you anymore. The best part, you don't need to argue, explain, or even expose them. You simply deny them the reaction they crave. This silent mastery not only protects you from manipulators, but also strengthens your overall resilience in life. You become calmer, more self-aware, and less vulnerable to toxic influences. The more you control your emotions, the less anyone can control you. Manipulators thrive in environments where boundaries are weak or unclear. They push, test, and exploit people who hesitate to say no, or who feel guilty about protecting their own space. To silently outsmart manipulators, you must develop unshakable boundaries that cannot be bent, no matter how cleverly someone tries to test them. Boundaries are not about being rude or confrontational. They are about clearly defining what you will and will not accept in your life. For example, if someone constantly calls you late at night to unload their problems, you are not obligated to pick up every time. If a co-worker dumps extra tasks on you without asking, you don't need to comply just to avoid conflict. A manipulator might say, "Come on, it's just this once." Or, "You're the only one I can count on." But once you've set your boundary, you must stick to it firmly and calmly. The power lies in consistency. Manipulators notice patterns, and if you show them that your no sometimes means maybe, they will exploit that. On the other hand, if your boundary is unwavering, they are forced to respect it or move on. The silent genius here is that you don't have to argue, explain, or justify excessively. A simple, calm statement like, "I won't be able to do that," repeated consistently, becomes a shield. Over time, manipulators realize you are not an easy target, and they redirect their energy elsewhere. Protecting your time, energy, and emotions with strong boundaries not only keeps manipulators at bay, but also builds your self-respect. When you hold your line quietly and firmly, you silently communicate strength, and manipulators lose interest in battles they cannot win. One of the smartest ways to disarm manipulators silently is to use strategic agreeableness. This doesn't mean surrendering to their control. Rather, it means pretending to agree just enough to stop them from pushing further. While you keep your real intentions private, manipulators expect resistance, and they thrive when you argue or fight back, because that gives them more material to twist. But when you nod, smile, or say something neutral like, "You may be right," you take away their fuel. This strategy is especially powerful when the manipulator is trying to provoke you into conflict. Instead of giving them the battle they're craving, you use softness as a shield. For instance, if someone says, "You never listen to me, you're so selfish," you can calmly reply, "I hear what you're saying," without admitting guilt or entering into a defensive explanation. The manipulator thinks they've won a small victory, but in reality, you've sidestepped their trap. This approach keeps the peace externally while you remain internally in control. Strategic agreeableness is like a martial art. It uses the opponent's energy against them. You don't waste effort fighting head on. You redirect the situation in a way that preserves your mental strength. Over time, manipulators realize they cannot provoke you into draining battles, which makes them lose interest. The genius here is that you maintain your dignity without direct confrontation, all while leaving the manipulator confused, because they can't figure out why their usual tricks don't work on you. By appearing agreeable but standing firm inside, you win silently and effectively. Another powerful silent technique to outsmart manipulators is to mirror their behavior back at them in subtle ways. Manipulators often rely on psychological dominance. They talk over you, twist words, exaggerate, or act like victims. By gently reflecting their own behavior, you hold up a mirror that forces them to see their tactics without openly accusing them. For example, if they interrupt you constantly, you can calmly interrupt them in the same way, just once or twice, to highlight the pattern. If they exaggerate a story to make themselves look superior, you can respond with an equally exaggerated example to reveal the absurdity. The goal is not to mock them aggressively, but to give them a taste of their own medicine, so they realize you are not passive prey. This mirroring technique works best when done lightly and without hostility. It creates a subtle awareness in the manipulator that their tactics are being noticed and matched. For instance, if they try to guilt trip you by saying, "I guess I'm just not important to you," you can mirror with, "I could say the same when you ignore my needs." The genius here is subtlety. You don't openly challenge them, which might escalate conflict, but you also don't let their behavior go unchecked. Over time, manipulators begin to see that you are not an easy target, because you won't just absorb their tactics silently, you can reflect them back. This creates discomfort for them, as manipulators prefer people who are easy to control. By mirroring, you turn their own strategies into lessons they can't ignore. It's a silent but sharp way to show them that their tricks won't work on you anymore. Manipulators thrive on vagueness, half-truths, and hidden intentions. They often frame their words in ways that confuse you or pressure you into decisions before you've had the chance to think clearly. One of the simplest yet most genius silent weapons you can use is asking clarifying questions. Instead of reacting emotionally or giving quick answers, calmly ask them to explain what they mean. For example, if someone says, "Everyone thinks you're being unfair," a manipulator expects you to panic or defend yourself. Instead, you can reply, "Who exactly is everyone?" This question forces them to reveal specifics, and suddenly their vague manipulation loses its power. If they say, "You don't care about me?" you can ask, "What makes you feel that way?" Again, the burden shifts back onto them. Manipulators hate being questioned because it shines light on the tactics they would rather keep hidden. Questions also give you time to think, making sure you don't get cornered into snap decisions. They interrupt the manipulator's flow and force them to explain themselves, which often reveals contradictions in their story. Over time, this strategy silently shows them that you're not someone who can be easily controlled by vague accusations or emotional pressure. The beauty of clarifying questions is that they are calm, polite, and non-confrontational. You're not accusing or arguing, you're simply seeking clarity. But in reality, you're putting the manipulator on the defensive and making them work harder to justify their behavior. This quiet but firm approach exposes their game. Without ever raising your voice, manipulators exploit information. The more they know about your fears, desires, and plans, the easier it is for them to twist situations to their advantage. One silent yet powerful way to outsmart them is to keep your true intentions private. This doesn't mean you have to become secretive or cold. It simply means you share less with people who have shown signs of manipulation. For example, if you're planning to change jobs, you don't need to announce it to someone who might sabotage you by spreading rumors. If you're saving money for something important, you don't need to tell someone who might pressure you into lending it. By keeping your goals, struggles, and emotions to yourself, you deny manipulators the raw material they use to control you. Instead, you can practice the art of selective sharing, giving neutral or surface level responses without revealing too much. For instance, when asked about your weekend plans, instead of saying, "I'm finally going to work on my side project," you might simply say, "I'll be keeping busy." This way, you protect your deeper priorities from being used against you. Manipulators hate uncertainty, and when they cannot predict your actions or control your choices, they lose their grip. Privacy becomes power. The less they know, the harder it is for them to target you. This strategy is silent but extremely effective because you don't need to argue, resist, or confront directly. You simply stop feeding them information, and they are left guessing. When you guard your inner world, you take away their strongest weapon, the ability to use your own words and emotions against you. One of the most overlooked strategies in dealing with manipulators is documentation. Manipulators often rely on rewriting history, denying their own words, or twisting facts to confuse you. If you rely only on memory, they can gaslight you into questioning your own reality. The silent but genius solution is to document and observe everything. This could mean keeping written notes of important conversations, saving emails, or mentally recording patterns of behavior. For example, if a manipulative colleague at work keeps shifting blame onto you, write down the exact dates, times, and details of their actions. If they later deny it, you have a clear record to fall back on. In personal relationships, you don't necessarily need to confront them with your notes immediately. But having proof for yourself prevents self-doubt. Gaslighting loses its effect when you have documented evidence. Observation is equally important. Instead of reacting emotionally to their tactics, train yourself to step back and watch them like a scientist studying a subject. Notice the timing of their manipulations. Do they always guilt-trip you when they want a favor? Do they flatter you before asking for something? Observing these details without immediately reacting gives you a mental shield. Documentation and observation combined make you untouchable because manipulators depend on confusion, denial, and distortion. When you calmly keep track of reality, you not only protect yourself but also create a powerful backup if you ever need to expose them. The beauty of this approach is that it's silent. No fighting, no arguing, no drama. Just quiet preparation that strips manipulators of the advantage they think they hold over you. Manipulators survive by dragging you into their games. Whether it's guilt, blame, or emotional pressure, the silent way to win is not to play. Detachment is a skill that allows you to see manipulation without being pulled into its drama. Imagine a manipulator trying to make you feel guilty by saying, "If you really loved me, you'd do this for me." Most people rush to prove themselves. But if you're detached, you recognize it as a manipulation tactic and simply don't respond the way they expect. Detachment doesn't mean coldness. It means choosing not to emotionally invest in the manipulator's games. For example, if a co-worker is constantly stirring office drama to control the narrative, you don't need to get involved in gossip or defending yourself. Instead, you step back, stay professional, and refuse to engage. Manipulators thrive when they pull you into their emotional chaos, because that's where they control the field. But when you remain calm, collected, and indifferent to their traps, they lose their power. Detachment is silent resistance. You don't announce it, you don't argue, and you don't explain. You just stop feeding the cycle of reaction that keeps them in control. Over time, this makes you untouchable, because manipulators cannot manipulate someone who refuses to play along. Think of it like a chessboard. If your opponent makes a dramatic move to bait you, and you simply refuse to play that piece, their strategy collapses. By detaching from the manipulator's games, you protect your peace, conserve your energy, and silently communicate that you are not someone they can control. Manipulators prefer to work in the shadows, twisting words and actions when no one else is watching. They thrive in one-on-one situations where they can deny, distort, and gaslight without consequences. A subtle but powerful way to outsmart them is to leverage social proof, meaning you bring their behavior into light by making sure others are present to witness interactions. This doesn't require confrontation or dramatic exposure. It can be as simple as ensuring that important conversations happen in group settings, emails instead of private chats, or with other people around. For example, if a manipulative colleague tries to shift blame for a project, you can calmly reply in a group meeting, "Yes, let's clarify responsibilities together so everyone is on the same page." Suddenly, their ability to twist the story is diminished. Social proof is powerful because manipulators care deeply about how they are perceived. When their tactics are visible to others, they are far less likely to try them. In personal relationships, social proof can mean casually discussing plans or agreements in front of others so that the manipulator cannot later deny them. The genius here is that you don't accuse them. You simply ensure that truth lives in the open. This protects you silently, because others begin to notice patterns on their own. Over time, the manipulator's credibility erodes without you needing to attack them directly. By using social proof, you transform the manipulator's favorite environment, secrecy, into their greatest weakness. The moment a manipulator senses that you are emotionally unstable, they see opportunity. They push harder, knowing they can trigger you into saying or doing something you'll regret. That's why staying calm under pressure is one of the most powerful silent strategies you can develop. Imagine a manipulator yelling, blaming, or accusing you, hoping to make you snap. Instead of raising your voice or breaking down, you maintain composure. This completely disarms them because their power comes from shaking your stability. Calmness is not weakness, it is quiet strength. It allows you to see the manipulator's tactics clearly, choose your words carefully, and avoid being dragged into their chaos. Staying calm also protects your reputation. Manipulators often try to provoke you in public so that you appear irrational while they play the victim. But when you remain cool, others begin to notice the contrast. Your stability versus their chaos. This silently shifts the power dynamic in your favor. The key to mastering calmness is preparation. Practice deep breathing, pause before responding, and remind yourself that their words are tools of control, not truth. When you no longer react emotionally, the manipulator loses their grip. Calmness is like an invisible shield. It frustrates manipulators because they cannot figure out how to break you. Instead of feeding their drama, you radiate control and authority. Over time, this makes them back off because manipulators don't waste energy on people who can't be rattled. Staying calm under pressure isn't just a defense against manipulation. It's a life skill that strengthens every area of your personal and professional relationships. Manipulators often love group settings because they think they can control the narrative, play the victim, or shift blame while others watch. But what they don't expect is silence used strategically. When a manipulator says something unfair, many people rush to defend themselves, creating drama. Instead, you can calmly remain silent. This silence makes everyone else in the group turn their attention to the manipulator, forcing them to explain or justify their statement. For example, if someone says in a meeting, "Well, we all know John never finishes things on time." Instead of defending yourself immediately, you simply stay quiet and let the weight of their words hang in the air. Silence here works like a mirror. It reflects their pettiness for everyone to see. Often, other people will step in and question the manipulator, making them look like the aggressor without you having to lift a finger. The beauty of group silence is that it doesn't just protect you, it shifts the burden of proof back onto the manipulator. They expected an emotional reaction, but instead, they are left standing alone with their tactic exposed. Strategic silence in groups also shows confidence. It demonstrates that you don't need to fight every battle with words, because your calm presence speaks louder. Over time, manipulators learn that you are not a convenient target, and they avoid trying to embarrass or control you in public settings. It's a silent but powerful way to flip the spotlight back onto them. One of the most timeless ways to defeat manipulators is to develop Stoic detachment, a mindset where external events and other people's words cannot shake your inner peace. Manipulators thrive when they can control your emotions, but Stoicism teaches that no one can truly harm you unless you allow them to disturb your state of mind. Practicing detachment doesn't mean becoming cold or uncaring. It means creating an inner fortress where manipulative tactics cannot penetrate. For example, if someone tries to belittle you in front of others, instead of feeling crushed or angry, you remind yourself that their words reflect their own character, not your worth. If they try to guilt-trip you, you detach by recognizing that their emotions are theirs to manage, not yours to carry. Stoic detachment also trains you to focus only on what you can control: your actions, your choices, your reactions, while letting go of what you cannot. This completely disarms manipulators because they rely on getting you to focus on their emotional traps. When you remain steady, they have nothing to work with. Practicing detachment may involve meditation, journaling, or simply pausing before reacting. Over time, it becomes second nature. The genius of Stoic detachment is that it doesn't just protect you from manipulators. It makes you stronger in every aspect of life. You gain clarity, patience, and resilience. Manipulators hate this because they cannot stand people who are immune to their tactics. By training yourself in Stoic detachment, you silently rise above their games, leaving them powerless and frustrated. The final and most powerful way to outsmart manipulators silently is to walk away. Manipulators count on your fear of losing them, your need for their approval, or your hesitation to let go. But the truth is, the ultimate freedom comes when you realize you don't need to stay in a toxic dynamic. Walking away doesn't mean storming out with anger. It means calmly choosing to step back from people who refuse to respect you. It could be ending a draining friendship, limiting contact with a manipulative family member, or setting professional boundaries so firm that the manipulator no longer has access to you. This act of walking away is silent, but it speaks volumes. It says, "You cannot control me because I don't need your approval or presence in my life." Manipulators hate losing control more than anything. When you detach and leave the table, they are left powerless because their tactics only work if you stay engaged. Walking away also preserves your energy for relationships that are genuine, respectful, and supportive. It allows you to invest in people and situations where you can grow instead of constantly defending yourself against manipulation. This is the ultimate silent victory because you don't argue, justify, or beg. You simply remove yourself from the game altogether. Walking away is not weakness, it's strength. It is the moment you reclaim complete control of your life and send a clear message without saying a word. Manipulators have no power where they have no access.